You can't have kids, right? That's why I'm giving you this child. Be grateful. If you can't bear a child, at least contribute to society by raising one. I struggled to comprehend what was being said to me. Then, unbelievably, my sister abandoned her daughter, who was suffering from a rare disease. Is this really what a parent should do? We will make sure this child is happy and make her regret abandoning her. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old, and I've been a housewife for 8 years, married. Initially, my in-laws often pressured us about having children. My friends talked about the wonders of having children, yet also mentioned the lack of freedom, sleepless nights, and how they sacrificed themselves out of love. But my husband and I despise that. It's not that we dislike children, we're just not good with them. That's an undeniable fact. After 8 years, it seemed like everyone realized and stopped bringing it up. I know it's selfish, but right now, I have too many things I want to do and can't devote time to a child. Such parents wouldn't be good for any child. I was raised as an adopted child, so I'm not fixated on blood relations and even thought about adopting when I got older. My husband, Henry, is understanding. He always says, "If we're blessed with a child, I'll mainly take care of it and support you." People who can't have children might envy us, but as someone who was abandoned by her parents, I couldn't be irresponsible. Friends' kids who were in elementary school or kindergarten seemed well-educated and cute. Maybe children born out of desire feel their parents' love. Of course, I consider the two who raised me as my real parents, and I'm grateful for them. I have an older sister who is 2 years my senior. Her name is Linda. Our parents wanted siblings but could only have one, so they adopted me. We got along well when we were young, but she started to dislike me as I had better grades. "You wouldn't be compared, and all the money would have been spent on me if you weren't here," she once said. For the sake of my parents' honor, I must say that they showered both of us with love and resources, not just mentally, but emotionally too. They never compared us, not once. It was only Linda who felt inferior on her own. She just chose not to study where I did, and that led to comparisons. It was frustrating for me. Maybe because she hated studying, Linda decided to become an internet idol and used our parents' money to buy all the necessary equipment, but she never really put in the effort. Looking at successful people, one might think it's easy, but it requires relentless work. That was always Linda's problem, underestimating things. Linda, not lacking in looks, had her fans, and among them, the most generous was Mark, with whom she had a shotgun marriage. She probably thought he was rich, but unfortunately, it turned out he was in debt from spending on her. Even our parents hesitated, but not wanting to see their grandchild suffer, they paid off his debts and secured him a job. The job paid well, so my sister and her husband's lives stabilized. But Linda's poor financial sense remained unchanged, preventing them from saving anything. Then one day, Linda's daughter Karen suddenly fell ill. Actually, there were signs earlier, but Linda, being stingy, hadn't taken her to the hospital. When I arrived after Linda called me, Karen was lying in bed, connected to tubes. I was told the reason I was called. Karen's kidneys were failing. They wanted me to get tested to see if I was a match. I would have said no if it were just Linda, but I was fond of Karen. She was so sensible for a 7-year-old. I often thought she was the kind of daughter I'd like. Thinking I wouldn't be a match, I agreed to the test, but it turned out I was. "Please, I'll definitely make it up to you. Save Karen," Linda begged. I wanted to believe that she meant it. After the operation, Karen was out of danger, but that's when the real problems began. Linda hadn't insured her, so the costs were substantial. Then Linda came to me again. "Could you help with Karen's treatment costs? I can't ask our parents anymore, and I need this to be kept secret." "What about Mark? He's got a good salary from the job Dad found for him, right?" Linda sneered. "That salary is nothing. If our parents find out about our spending, Mark might get fired and we'd be on the streets. Is that what you want?" I felt like saying yes, but I couldn't, not with Karen being used as a pawn. "I'll lend you the money, but you have to write a promissory note. Exploiting your daughter's illness is despicable." Fine, I understand. Save the sermon," Linda replied. When she brought the promissory note later, she signed it without even reading it. This is why she never saves any money. Despite having such parents, Karen turned out well, which impressed me. After that, I began visiting Karen's hospital room more often. Was it because I had donated a kidney? Or because I had lent them money? No, it was out of pity for Karen. Karen told me that I visited more than Linda, who now seemed to look at me coldly. After a long course of treatment, Karen ended up needing a wheelchair for mobility. Then, on the day she was to be discharged, an incident occurred. An unknown number called, and since it was my day off, I answered. Hello? Hello? Is this Sarah's phone? This is General Hospital. That's Karen's hospital. Thank you. You have the right number. Thank you. Sorry to bother you, but Karen's hospital bill is unpaid, and today she's supposed to be discharged. But no one has come for her, and we can't reach her parents. I felt a sudden chill and a rush of heat. My heart clenched. Without realizing it, I was already on my way to the hospital. I got into a taxi and called Linda. Hello, what are you doing? Today is Karen's discharge day, right? I couldn't stay calm and ended up shouting. Can you lower your voice? I can hear you. I don't want that kid, so I'm giving her to you. It's perfect since you can't have children, right? If you can't have your own, at least contribute to society by raising one. I couldn't believe it. You're the worst, just like my birth parents. You don't deserve to be a parent. And what about the hospital bills? I could hear her laughter over the phone. Sorry, I spent it. It's hard to resist when you suddenly get a lot of money. I've been wanting to do something for a while. It's useless to tell Mark. He can't go against me. He married an idol like he wanted. He can't resist me. He's fine with getting rid of the child. Anyway, we can't pay, so if you don't take her, she might as well be gone, right? I don't remember, but maybe my birth parents were like this. I thought this was my battle of mourning, a revenge against the parents who abandoned me. More than anything, I couldn't stand to hand Karen over to Linda. Fine, I'll pay the hospital and surgery bills, and I'll take Karen as my child. Consider it a severance payment. Really? I was worried about how to repay the money I borrowed, but you'll pay that too? I've gained a total of $100,000, plus I can reset my life by getting rid of a daughter in a wheelchair. I should have another child and have them support me in the future. Linda's reason for having children was the worst. I didn't want to talk anymore. I hung up, apologized to the hospital repeatedly, completed the payment, and through lawyers, I arranged a private adoption for Karen to officially become our child. Karen became our child officially. I thought Henry would oppose it, but when I timidly told him afterwards, he said, "That's why I love you. I can't forgive Linda either. A family of 3 will surely be fun." And I ended up crying. I'm so grateful to have married such a wonderful person. And that's how Karen officially became our child. My parents probably thought it was best for Karen's rehabilitation and care to be with us. They even offered to help. Linda seemed a bit resentful, perhaps worried about our parents finding out about the money. She didn't dare come by. When I honestly told Karen, she was surprisingly calm for a 7-year-old. I thought so. Mom and Dad never visited me. Now, Sarah, you're my mom. Sorry if I'm not used to it yet. She accepted it, but I knew she had been silently crying in her bed. I used to think I had so many things I wanted to do, but now Karen has become my reason for living. Having been involved with her since birth, albeit indirectly, it didn't take time for me to develop affection. Seeing a young child struggling and crying during rehabilitation, even if she's not my biological child, I felt encouraged to support her. Karen was a real trooper, finding ways to do things despite her disability and always trying her hardest. I forgot about the money and supported her to the fullest. With the help of my parents, Karen grew rapidly. Thanks to rehabilitation, she gained some movement in her right leg. She still needed a wheelchair, but she was able to do more. When Karen turned 9, she said, "Mom, I want to be like this person." By then, Karen had gotten used to calling me Mom and Henry Dad, and she showed me a video. It was a video of a blind pianist. That's cool, but it must be hard, right? Don't you need a special sense for that too? Karen just opened the piano app on her tablet, then she casually played the piece from the video. I'm shocked. That's amazing. Did you practice a lot? Well, I just listened and remembered it. It's kind of like, I just got curious. I played a commercial jingle from TV and asked, "Can you play this?" After just hearing it once, she played it effortlessly. That's incredible. Maybe you have perfect pitch. Hey, Henry, look at this. What's going on? It's rare to see you this excited. Sarah and I repeated the whole interaction again. Let's buy a grand piano, and for that we need a bigger room. Maybe we should build a house. In those 2 years, Henry had become a doting father, always spoiling Karen. 5 years later, Linda, through our parents, reached out. Linda and Mark came for the discussion. I left the kids with my parents and decided to talk in the living room of my childhood home with Henry. I didn't want them to know our current address. My parents were waiting in another room. So what do you want? You moved away and cut off all contact. And what's with that figure? I hardly recognize you. I've had some issues with my weight, but that's not important right now. I had heard from my parents that Linda was in the middle of divorce proceedings, apparently due to infidelity, and she had gained a lot of weight from overeating and drinking. Mark was there, seemingly coerced by Linda. He probably wanted to see his daughter one last time. He seemed disappointed not to see her there. Since then, they hadn't had any more children, and I thought it was poetic justice. I would lose faith in any god that would give such irresponsible people children again and again, but I am grateful that they gave me Karen. You're not asking for money again, are you? Please, I need treatment. I've developed diabetes from binge eating and drinking. I can't work, and the treatment is expensive. We may not be blood-related, but we're still sisters, right? Help me. Linda apologized with gestures that seemed insincere. Then she first returned the $50,000. Linda looked confused. You didn't read the promissory note, did you? I guess you don't have it anymore. That money is a settled issue, isn't it? It's insincere to bring it up now. She had no right to say that. I was irritated but decided to enlighten her. I only waived the money. I paid for your hospitalization. I never said anything about waiving the loan. You misunderstood, and since we couldn't find you, we gave up. Remember, I said I'd take the hospital and surgery expenses as severance. You haven't repaid the money you embezzled, but now I can claim it. What? I came here because I have no money, and now you're going to bill me? Linda said defiantly. Then suddenly, the door of the next room swung open. There stood Karen, dignified, even with her disability. Her face had taken all the good features from Linda, making her an extraordinary beauty. Is that Karen? You've grown. Look, you can tell, right? She's grown up to be so much like me. Who are you? Karen's disdainful look was as if she were staring at trash. What kind of language is that? Have you been raised properly, calling your mom you? Mom is right here, and Dad is next to her. Karen pointed at me and Henry. I felt tears welling up. I had become a doting parent, too. I never thought I'd cry over my child. Besides, you have a $50,000 debt and are getting divorced. How are you going to raise Karen, who still needs a wheelchair? Mark can take care of it. Of course he can't. Defy me? Seriously, is she an idiot? She was already defying him by going through divorce proceedings. Then Mark stood up. Enough is enough. I'm fed up. I can't stand it anymore. Sarah, I'm sorry for everything. I promise to pay off the debt. I'll take over the compensation money for you and start over. The debt is only being shouldered temporarily. I don't want to trouble Karen anymore. Even if I'm a failed father, I must take responsibility. I heard from friends that you've been bad-mouthing me behind my back. Now you have 0 fans. What? You're betraying me too? Linda tried to act tough, but it seemed to hit her hard. Her face turned bright red. Mark turned to us and said he would contact us later, then left. I didn't sympathize with Mark, but I hoped he wouldn't be brainwashed again. By the way, Dad and Mom know about your current debt. They told me not to come out today. They didn't want to see their own daughter's downfall and wanted to protect my son. What? I thought you couldn't have kids. She had misunderstood. Not wanting kids and being unable to have them are entirely different. We just chose not to. We were hesitant because of Karen's treatment costs, but now Karen doesn't have to worry about money. The house you're living in now is Dad's property, but it's been gifted to Karen, so the rent will go to her. You're welcome to leave if you don't like it. What? Why are you giving it away while she's still a minor? I'm her parent, so if Karen gets it, I should too. I patiently explained the adoption to Linda and that she no longer had parental rights. Linda then blustered one last time. Fine, she's living with a disability anyway. She won't make much money even if you take her in. I silently showed her a video site. What's this? Why is Karen in it? It's got a lot of views. Karen has perfect pitch. If you had paid attention to your daughter, you would have known. We made videos of her playing impromptu piano pieces as part of her rehabilitation, and they went viral. She's now a famous influencer for her beauty and talent, and don't bother trying to take advantage. I've recorded this conversation, and I'll release it if anything happens. Linda hurriedly left, almost fleeing. Since then, Mark had apologized and worked hard, asking my parents for a loan. Because of the job they'd helped him get, my father trusted Mark after looking into his eyes and decided to lend him the money. He lent it interest-free with a promise that Mark would pay back monthly. My dad said he believed Mark would be fine now. Linda, with no one to turn to and estranged, was reportedly suffering from diabetes and living on welfare. She was unrecognizable from her days as an internet idol. I thought Karen would thwart my dreams, but now, thanks to her, my dreams have come true. That's because, after becoming famous, Karen received numerous invitations to perform worldwide, not just as a wheelchair pianist, but for her pure talent. My dream was to travel the world. I fully support Karen as her manager. My husband stays in America, focusing on raising our son. Karen is popular enough to support us with her income alone, yet she loves her brother dearly and often returns to America to spend time with the family. Recently, Karen thanked me out of the blue. What's up? Why suddenly? Because of you, Mom. I have this life. Your kidney is inside me. I will never be apart from you, and that makes me happy. I'm so glad to have become Karen's parent. The words Karen said to Linda were what I wanted to say to my birth parents. Karen made me feel vindicated. If Linda hadn't been so twisted, maybe her life would have been different. I felt I understood the likely unhappy lives of my birth parents without seeing them. Karen's music enriches the soul.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully." Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident, especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it." Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. "Do you two know each other?" "Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, 'I'm moving to the sales department soon.' If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.